Hey there, greetings everybody. I want to welcome you here to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So it's Wednesday night. It's time for our favorites. I did promise a 25 this week, but I've misplaced my paperwork. I don't even know what I had on it. So I'm going to go today with another one that I had done a while ago and it put it off. I did two of these. So the first one was called 5 Albums That Grew on Me, and the second one was called 5 More Albums That Grew on Me. This one is going to be entitled Another 5 Albums That Grew on Me. So there was actually 3 of these, and I had 15 albums picked out originally. I did two separate videos, and then I kind of backed off this one for not really sure why. I think I had something else planned to do, and I did that and never got back to this. And so I'm going to substitute this one tonight for the 25 until I find my list, and I'll hopefully find it this week, and then I'll be able to do it next week. So this is another 5 albums that grew on me. So really, what this is about is that these were all albums that, for whatever reason, I didn't really like them when I first heard them. I thought they were too complex or they were too out of the grains. Most of these albums, I'm thinking I'm looking at least 3 of these albums I didn't like initially because I wasn't in that mindset for them when I did these, and they was like in my teens at the time. The other 2, one, I think I didn't like it because I didn't really think it sounded like the band, but it grew on me over time. And then the last one was from a band that I didn't listen to much and found that era of them a little bit odd. So we're going to start. These are not in any particular order, but we'll start with this one. So I'm going to do these. There's 5 of them. They're not in any particular order. It's just a random order. I'm just going to talk about the albums. So the first one, I know this is a Ripley's, believe it or not, is Crime of the Century from Supertramp. I didn't initially like this album. I think the reason being is that my first album by Supertramp was Breakfast in America, a much more commercial sounding album. At the time that Breakfast in America came out, I was 15, and this seemed too bluesy, too in-depth, too involved, too commercial, not commercial enough, I guess, so I didn't really take to it right away. I didn't mind the song School, but the rest of the album just seemed a little too much for me. But over time, this has become one of my favorite albums, masterpiece album on my list, actually. Absolutely a killer album. So over time, it grew on me. So as I matured, I guess is the best way to put it, the album matured along with me and grew into become one of my favorite albums. So that's the first one on the list today, Supertramp's Crime of the Century. The second one from my favorite band is this album, Rush, Hemispheres. So the first time I heard this album was probably maybe in 1981. And at that point in time, I was about 17. I thought this was really out there. I didn't think much of it. I thought it was too different from anything I'd heard from them at that point. The only albums at that point I had actually heard were Fly By Night and Permanent Waves and the forthcoming Subdivisions album, Signals, sorry. But this one here, I heard it and I thought and even Farewell to Kings, I wasn't big on that one right away either, but I liked it more because I heard it more. This one just seemed a little bit too much for me. Now it's probably one of my 2 or 3 favorite Rush albums of all time. This is an absolutely killer album. Very complex. Maybe their most complex of all their albums. Definitely the most progressive of all their albums. So thus far, I've fallen in love with this album over the years, and it's only getting stronger as time goes on. but initially wasn't really keen on it. Okay, the next album up from one of the world's most famous bands, the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's. I did not like this album. I found it too psychedelic, and I wasn't into psychedelic music when I first heard it. I found a lot of poppy. I just found their whole concept of the album strange. Didn't really care for it at all. And now it's become one of my favorite Beatles albums. And for all of the reasons I didn't like it, I now love it for those same reasons. So lots of really good stuff on this album. Just going to get my glasses out here so I can actually see what I'm looking at here. So yeah, lots of good stuff on this that I did not necessarily normally like. Like, I didn't like the song Sgt. Pepper's. The only track on this that I always liked was With a Little Help from My Friends, which for a long time was one of my favorite Beatles songs. I didn't care for a lot of the deeper cuts, like Getting Better, Fixing a Hole, She Leaving Home, Being in the Benefit of Mr. Kite, like all these little odd tracks. I didn't like any of them. But eventually, this album grew on me to the point where, like the song Sgt. Pepper's I like a lot. This also has With a Little Help from My Friend, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and A Day in the Life, which are all among my top 10 favorite songs by this band. But in that initial period, I found it too strange. The next album, I found this too way out there. I almost felt like this was like an outlier album for them. Really kind of a jazz fusion-y album, and I didn't care for it at all. And that's Yes's Relayer. Found the cover. I liked the cover, but the rest of I just couldn't listen to it. To me, it was unlistenable. Couldn't stand it. Didn't think anything of it. Didn't even like any of the tracks at all. And then over time, I gave it more time and more of a chance. I think the reason I kept going back at it there was a couple of reasons. The first one was that it was Yes, so it had to be good. I had to force myself to like it. The other thing is that this cover is just so good that it just kept drawing me in. Eventually, I warmed up to the Sound Chaser, so that became kind of the song that I would listen to on the album. And then because I tend to be an album person, I started listening to the whole thing. Now I think this is a number one album. It could end up being a masterpiece at some point. It's getting close to that now, but definitely it took about a good 30 years for me to really like this album a lot. It was a really slow process. One of the slowest processed albums I've ever had to deal with. But it grew on me to the point where it's now in my top 7 albums by Yes. Yeah, it's a fantastic album now. But I didn't like it initially. And the last one was actually started out as a big disappointment. I decided to buy one based on some suggestion by people. Jethro Tull's Crest of a Knave. And to me, this didn't sound like Tull at all. In fact, it sounded more like Dire Straits. And it's not that I don't like Dire Straits, but I don't like them like I like Tull. And so this really kind of didn't sit with me well. Not at all. I had it for a couple of years, and I was just like, every time I look at it, I was still disappointed about it. And then it just kind of started to grow on me. And then now I absolutely love it. I think it's one of their better albums from that time period anyways. Just a fantastic stuff on here. Very different than a lot of other Tull stuff, but definitely Tull, and I grew to like this album quite a bit. So there you have it. 5, sorry, just going to re-get them. I put them on the floor over there. 5 albums that I initially either didn't like or didn't care for, in some cases despised, but I grew to love. And Supertramp's Crime of the Century, Rush's Hemispheres, Yes's Relayer, Tull's Crest of a Knave, and the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper. All 5 of these are great albums. I like them all now quite a bit. A couple of them are closing in on a chance to become a masterpiece album, which I will do probably in September. I think I'm going to have 6 or 7 new masterpiece albums added, and there's at least two of these on here that are in the running to get into that elite group. So there you go. Those are the 5 albums for today. That another 5 albums that grew on me in time, and so now I've completed all the albums that I wanted to do for that. It took, I don't know how long ago that was. Maybe 3-4 months ago I did the first 2. Then this one just got lost in the shuffle. So I feel good about getting that out there, and we'll try to get to 25 if I can find it. We'll do that next week, and I hope to see you then. So please hit the like, subscribe, make your comments, and don't forget the notification bell, and we will see you then. Take care and goodbye.